Today I'm going to talk to you about how I am quilting my Bohemian Peaks quilt. Now, here is an illustration of the king size version. That way we do have a little bit more drawing space to go ahead and draw everything out. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. And before we get started, if you do like this quilt pattern, I will have a link down below in the description for it, as well as the PDF pattern to download it if you would like. But let's go ahead and get started. So first off, when I was looking at this quilt and also building this quilt, I originally just had in mind these peaks were going to be stitched in the ditch, and then I was going to quilt something in the triangles, but all of this top area I was going to quilt the same thing throughout because the point of the triangle does not go all the way up to the top. So you could be free motion quilting and squeeze in to the other side and continue on. And that was my original plan, which you can still do, and that would really show those triangles out so much. But when I was building and constructing this quilt, one pattern kept popping up in my face, and this is kind of the reason why I wanted to custom quilt this king size quilt, because if you all know me, I do not really custom quilt the king size quilts I make because I have 4 dogs and one of them still likes to go through a phase where she will eat the mattress, which means there's a quilt on the mattress and she eats the quilt. So I usually do not like to, but seeing this pattern, I really wanted to custom quilt it out. And that secondary shape, if you haven't kind of seen it already, is one of my other favorite quilt patterns that I like to do, and that is a chevron, just like so. So I kept seeing this chevron appear, so I really wanted to quilt something and kind of make that secondary shape appear. So what I did is with my long arm, I would stitch in the ditch all the way up this line, come down, and then I would just keep making my way all the way down. And once I got to the end, I would come back and quilt about a 1/4 inch in using a straight edge ruler, and I was just making my way all the way back down to the other end. Now I have a 24-inch throat space long arm machine, which is fairly large, and this next step I kind of had to do this just because of my space. Because when you attach a ruler base to your long arm machine, most long arm machines you will lose even more throat space. So with my machine, I could only come down and quilt the 1/4 inch space on that edge. And I would make my way all the way down to the very end. Now I'm not going to go all the way down, but I'm going to go just right here. Then it was prepared. So my machine actually looked mostly like this section when I was quilting. But after I would quilt in between the chevron and I would roll the quilt up, I would go back and then stitch in the ditch. I am a huge stitch in the ditch fan, so I like to do that. But what I did for the chevrons on the inside was quilt basically a clamshell version, but in like a paisley shape. So if you're very familiar with a clamshell, you come up around and then you come up again, and then you usually just keep echoing like so. And that's the clam shape. But instead, we're going to do a paisley shape or like a feather shape. And then we're going to come up and then echo around and then echo around. And that's one way to do it. So you could go a paisley shape or feather shape, And once you get to this circle point down here, you can bounce out and echo around. But there's another way you can do this. And instead of getting to the point, you could just get close, but then bounce out, up and around, not get too close, up and around. And this right here was the shape I was doing. So let me go ahead and erase those. And in the chevron, and let's go ahead and move this down a little bit. I would do a paisley shape and then echo out, stop, bounce out. And then I would throw in another paisley shape, but in a different direction. Bounce out, not all the way. And sometimes I would even stop halfway. And then let's throw a paisley shape this way, bounce in, out, maybe come down, because I was like, oh, I didn't fill in this area. So I would just come down, maybe do a paisley shape here, echo. And then sometimes I would travel on this line and then kind of echo or throw another paisley and then echo around. And I would just do this shape all the way in those areas. Now, because I did a semi-dense pattern, let's go ahead and bump this out. Or you know what, we'll leave it. Since I would do like a dense pattern in this row, the next chevron, I would once again do the 1/4, or excuse me, 1/4 inch echo around the outside from stitching in the ditch. And I would also do that to the bottom, just like so. But instead, because we did an organic shape up at the top, I am going to do line work. And what I would do is from the bottom line right here, I would measure 1 inch and do a line. Then I would come up 1 inch and then come back down. And this would be an inch spacing as well. Then I would come up 1 inch and back down. Now, because of my long arm throat space, I could not go up to the point and then do 1 inch down this way. Instead, I would have to hit that point on the line, back travel 1 inch, go up, and then come down. And I would go an inch spacing. And then, because I like using my straight edge ruler for long arm quilting on my left hand, I would actually come down and measure 1 inch from this line and go up and then come 1 inch in, and it would be the center line. And that's the way I did it, just because I don't like using a long arm quilt ruler with my right hand, because I like to move the machine with my right hand. So that's a personal preference for me. But once I get down to this bottom, I would come all the way back down to the point, then I would come 1 inch up and basically repeat. So I would go across, 1 inch up, come back down, 1 inch up, and go across. And because I didn't have enough throat space, I would just back travel 1 inch, go up, and then come back down, 1 inch, come across, 1 inch, across, and go 1 inch in the middle. And I would just keep repeating these steps. Now let's go ahead and bump this out. And once again, I would then roll my quilt up and stitch in the ditch. That way it really helps keep this shape and kind of make it pop more a little bit. And that's what I did. So I just alternate every other row. So then this next row, I would do, of course, the 1/4 inch all the way down, make my way back, and then I would do the paisleys. And then I would do the next row and then do the line work. So I alternated. Now, as for the top, in this case, I believe I started with the paisleys at first, so it's not too bad. You just keep continuing, but it's going to be filled in this rectangular shape, sort of. But in this case, the way I drew it, you would start with the line work. So you would just go 1-inch line work, like so, is what I would do on the edges. And then for the main piece, I would do 1 inch, do the 3 lines. Make sure you also have your 1/4 inch echo. Almost forgot about that. Here, let's make the brush smaller. So we would have our 1/4 inch echo as well. Now I would do from that 1/4 inch, 1 inch, come down 1 inch, here, 1 inch, there. Then I would do the same thing but on the other side. And you kind of just get the top portion. And you will create a little diamond right here, and then you just kind of repeat. So once again, you would just come 1 inch from your echo, come down an inch, and then you'll kind of go this way. Then you go, and don't measure 1 inch this way. It's 1 inch this way from this line. And then you'll go across. Then I kind of went up over here, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. And then I just traveled along that line. Now, as you can see here, we do have a border, and this is my first time I've ever custom quilted a border before, and I've never done it. So since it was my first time, I wanted to do 2 of my favorite styles of border quilting, and that is feathers and piano keys. I am a huge sucker for feathers and piano keys. So what I did is, especially on the corner, I would actually use a fabric air erasable or iron erasable, and I would draw my stem first because I kind of wanted to get an idea of where it was, because I wasn't going to do a feather throughout the whole entire thing. So I would just pick a corner and kind of just go out, come in, and just draw a squiggly line. And then I would kind of trace it with my Longarm machine. That way I'm a little bit more confident since this was my first time doing a massive feather. Then I would start on one side and just fill it in with feathers. So I'd come in, bounce out, come back in. Then I would even do like small ones, come out, and just to give it some shape a little bit, like so. And then I would get to the end. Now on the other side, I would once again start my feathers, but instead, this is the edge right here. I am not going to get that close to that edge. Now I'll get close, like here for an example. I'll get close to it, but I will not touch it. And then I'll come in, bounce out, come in, around. And then I'll start to get a little bit bigger and stop. There we go. Little messy. I'm not that good on a drawing tablet, but I would have a feather right there. Then, since this is the top of my quilt, I would kind of like space it out a little bit, and then I would do another little swervy line. And then once again, do feathers all around and fill that in here. And over here, I would just quickly fill that in, do feathers, but not touch the edge. Okay, it's very important not to touch the edge, or at least for what I had envisioned. So now we have all of this empty space and this little squiggly space and then all that to fill in. And this is where my piano keys kind of came into play. So I'm going to zoom in and let's scroll up. From this edge right here, I measured 1 inch away and I would make it a line. Then I would do a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, like so, and then 1 inch away. Then once again, 1/4, 1/2, 1/4, 1 inch. And if that's a little bit confusing for your brain, what I would do is take a ruler and I would mark out little lines like so with an area erasable marker, and I would mark every 1 inch away. And then I would mark a little X on every other one with that same erasable marker. Or you can use a chalk pencil, whichever you prefer, to mark your quilts. Then the ones with the X's, I would do the 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, and then the line would go there. And then a line would go here, and then I would do the 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, skip, line. 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, skip, line. And that kind of helped me get across. Now, once we get into this open space, I am keeping the same thing. Now I'm just going to do straight lines just to make this go by a little quicker. But I would just bring it all the way up to the edge of the quilt. And I would fill all of this in with the piano keys, and then every other one I would mark and do the 1/4 inch, as you can see just real quick. And I would just keep doing that all the way down. And then once I get to this new feather, which let me just draw some lines real quick, I would sometimes have to break it up and then start again, and then it gets smaller and smaller. And then once again, every other one I would have the 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch lines. So it kind of gives you like this pinstripe look of piano keyboards, and that was my favorite thing to do. Now, as far as the corner, you could draw a 45-degree line and then just keep it like so. That's one way of doing it. Or what I ended up doing is I framed this section off. So I used that top of the line, and then I measured 1 inch in and 1 inch in, and I kind of made this L frame shape. And sometimes I would have to do one or two. Now this one and this one didn't have the extra pinstripe, so this one right here, I would do the 1/4 inch and continue, and then this one would be empty. And then same thing on the sides, I would go ahead and frame it and do 1 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2, 1/4, 1 inch. And I would repeat that down. Second thing, what I did is, if you see here, my feather is going in from left to right as far as direction. Then the top feather that I did here, scrolling, there we go, is going that direction. Then I kind of did another feather here. My petals are going to go this way and then down. Then when I scrolled through my quilt, I would kind of keep track of like how many blocks there were. And then I'd be like, okay, I wanted to skip 3 blocks and then start another spine. And my feather petals would go downwards. And once I got to the edge of the quilt, here's another spine. They would go down for my petals and then this direction. Then at the bottom of my quilt, here's a petal. They would go that way, around, and then they went this way and then back up. So honestly, what I did, especially since this was my first time quilting feathers on a border and my brain was getting a little jumbled up, what I did is I actually quilted the top, this little top corner on the left hand, all the way across to the right, and then I would roll up my quilt as time would go, and I would only do feathers on the right side. And then I would come to the bottom, and once I finished completing my quilt all the way at the bottom, I actually had this left side border to finish quilting out. And that is because for me, since I wanted to do feathers going in this direction, I had a hard time quilting this feather direction shape, but from top to bottom. But I wanted to look like this. So this was actually kind of pretty challenging for me since I wanted to keep it in the same direction. So I kind of made it easier for myself and left the border empty until the end. And then basically I started from the bottom. So once I finished completing the quilt, I would undo my quilt basically and then start rolling the bottom of it back. So it's like I'm rolling my quilt backwards. And then I started sewing. And once I hit the head bar, then I would advance the quilt in reverse form and then quilt and continue again. And then once I hit the head bar again, re-advance the quilt, come back and re-quilt. And I would do that and I think it saved me a good amount of time, not sure. It was just a lot easier for me to do that. So hopefully that will help you out if you also struggle in that sense. But if you would like to see me actually quilt it out, please hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell because the next video coming out will be me long arm quilting this quilt.